and we'll get started. So, like I say, they started out at Stack Site, taking a lesson from last year. We talked before about how there were things that were done last year that, because of COVID, that might actually turn into some things that are going to continue. And it looks like one of those things is going to Stack Site early and uh, getting some things at Stack Site squared away. Like for instance, digging the holes for the light poles. So uh, here's where we start. Sunrise at Stack Site. Crews are just getting set up in the parking lot. Some horsing around. There's a couple things that I'm hoping turned out from the horsing around time. Also, FHK wore costumes. Um, you never can tell. Here we go. Almost right off the bat. So there was a shopping cart left out there. This is the one I'm hoping I got. Here we go. Can't see anything going wrong here, right? Yep, it worked. We got it. Perfect. All right, let's call it a day. That's it. It's all downhill from here. So there's OC. They're farting around and took a little spill. Just assuage everybody's concerns. I know you're deeply concerned, but obviously he was fine. Just fine. Shake it off. Greens are running check-ins still, just like it was a cut. Oh, let me make sure I got my chat window up here. We got a question: is a date set for burn? We're gonna. I think that's gonna be finalized here in the next week or two. Make sure that we're all on the same page with that date. But knowing it's an away game, at LSU, it'll if everything holds up and there's no variables, traditionally that's going to be a Tuesday burn, Tuesday before the game. So we'll have to make sure that still holds water. So yeah, any questions while we're going, just shoot them into the chat. I've got that pulled up, and I'll try and pay attention to that while we're looking at these two. For anybody who's never been on this before, what's going on here is that I was, for years, I've been sitting down and doing this anyway, spending about an hour or two on, reviewing photos, going through the photos from the weekend. So I was sitting here anyway, and I'm looking at photos anyway, and they were reminding me of stories and, stories that I've seen and stories that I've heard. And, all this in my head and looking at this stuff, I figured, well, just turn the camera on while I'm doing this. So, this is going to be, I'm doing what I normally do. Just looking through the photos and seeing if there's any that, comparing and switching back and forth and all that stuff. But, we're also gonna go down rabbit holes too. So they were punishing the shopping cart there. I missed the worst of it. Something, at Stack Site, it's out there. It's about 12 miles out. It's a little bit closer than, what is that? Carlos, Texas, which is one of the places that the university suggested moving it when it moved from Duncan Field. So it's closer than one of the university's proposed alternatives, which is nice, but it's still far enough out there that I mean, it's going to be great for a long time. You're not going to have encroachment on the city for a while, and probably a decade or two. So it's going to be a nice spot. But in the meantime, stuff disappears, and it's very frustrating. And the students have done a lot to try and protect the stuff. They try and bring stuff into town. They try and during the off seasons, but there's also work going on all the time. Brazos Wi-Fi generously donated a shipping container that they've kept a lot of stuff that they need on site, and still stuff disappears, and then other stuff just appears. So I don't know if somebody thinks it's a fair trade to leave a shopping cart in exchange for a welder, but apparently that's the case. So just some of the challenges of building bonfire off campus. Now, at this point, they're farting around with this this shopping cart, and I caught back in the background there. The juniors were getting together, meaning that they were about to call for yellows by my estimation, and so the yellows noticed that too. You see the junior red pots back here. They're about to call for the yellows for the morning meeting, and so same as out at Cut, same procedure. And so they do call for the yellows, and the yellows go taking off. And I tried to get that from a different angle than what we'd seen the week or two before, which was from behind the juniors. And unfortunately, I did not get to tell the yellows what direction exactly I wanted them to run. So they ended up kind of going at an angle I wasn't expecting. Maybe next time I'll tell them how to run. I won't. But I don't know. I kind of like one of these first ones. So I think I like that one. And obviously I'm trying to move here a little bit. That was a mistake. They have their conversation, a few minutes, and then they turn around, start coming back to get their crews. So, basically told that you're digging the holes, go get your crews and get to work. And so they got to run back and get their crews and get to work. And so what they're going to be doing is digging the holes for the light poles around perimeter. Which, hey, that's a great opportunity to remind you. When you support the gallery at on Patreon, patreon.com/DeonCGallery, you I think I left the link up there. When you support the gallery, you're supporting things like purchasing new lights for bonfires. So thanks to the support of folks who are supporting the gallery is going to be buying new lights for bonfire this year, so that they're all going to be super bright, and they're all going to be for helping me out. They're all going to be the right color temperature, and they're all going to be the same, so that I can actually develop photos a little bit faster and get better photos. But most importantly, there's going to be better working light inside perimeter, and then the lights that they already have, I'm going to point those out onto the skids, out into the fields, and improve working conditions all around the stack site. So, please consider supporting the gallery at patreon.com. Become a patron there, patreon.com/DeonCGallery, and help tell these bonfire stories, help share bonfire, and help make their work easier. Everybody's going into perimeter, and we're getting a little chat from one of the red pots. he was explaining at this point that the faster you get done, the faster you go home. Simple Modi speech, and there we go. Now he's standing right now. He's standing in the middle of what's going to be the stack architecture. So, in due time, not very long at all, you're going to see center pole and the windle sticks all around here. So you know we're getting close. I just got a message here. Let me check on that. All right, we're back. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to dig the holes down to, I think 5 feet was the target for the perimeter lights. The different crews are split up across the 4 different corners. And it was really kind of surprising how different the corners were. The dirt in the corners, you're going to see pretty quickly that there's a wide difference between how much work is getting done. Kruger's over here by ABT. ABT always makes a nice background. For those of you who don't know, this is the original Aggie Bonfire trailer. The original. So at some point this year, it's going to get a cleaning. It gets a cleaning every year or two. Get it all freshened up. FHK back there working on theirs. Schumacher just getting started on theirs. A little overexposed. Bring that down just a little bit. Heart. One of the sharks. And one of the costumes out there. And here's Walton and Leggett working together. I came back here a lot because, spoiler alert, Walton finished their hole first. And here's Kruger. Might recognize. Yeah, this is the one. So every year the whole architecture moves just a little bit. The poles aren't in the same spot every year. Otherwise, they would leave them in the ground every year. But you don't want to do that. You've got, in the very middle of the thing, you've got center pole. And around that, you got the 4 windle sticks. All of those are sunk into the ground a good ways. I mean, center pole's down 15 feet. So you're not going to put another center pole right on top of where you just had another center pole. You can't get it out all the way down to 15 feet. So you dig down a good ways, you cut it off, you pull that out. That's what's sliced up and given to donors as gifts. And then you backfill the rest. So you've got to move the whole architecture a little bit every year in order to steer clear of the previous poles. When you do that, you end up moving the whole geometry of the whole thing. So when the center pole and the windle sticks move, then of course the perimeter poles and then the perimeter light poles have to move, which is why every year they have to dig the poles again. It would certainly save some work on the poles on the outside to just leave it exactly where it is, but that's just not an option. This was OC and Lechner working together on their hole. I'll take that one. And again, there is such a thing as a post hole digger or auger. That does exist. There's all kinds of great tools that could do this job, but it's not bonfire if it's not harder than it has to be. So even when this is finished, and for all the work that goes into it, I mean, I had it came up in conversation earlier in the week. Somebody was uh, somebody was asking me about bonfire and spending time out there, and they said, well, how often is that going to happen? How much work are they going to be doing? I said, well, it's going to be every weekend, at least one day a weekend, some weekends too. It blew their mind. They couldn't they hadn't even thought of how much work goes into the whole thing. But once you understand that you're using axes for everything, and that you're carrying everything on your back and you're dragging it and throwing it onto the truck and the whole 9 yards, at that point it goes from being, hey, that's really cool, to that is mind blowing. And one of the fun experiences is when you've been around it enough, and then you it's kind of crazy when it becomes I don't want to say normal, but when it becomes expected that this is what's going to happen. And I forget, and anybody who's around it and anybody who's built it forgets that this is absolutely not normal to everybody else. All of that to say, as extraordinary as all the effort is that goes into building bonfire, consider that even the stuff is that people aren't even going to think about, like the light poles. Even the light poles require physical investment. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Anyway, we're back at we're looking through some ones from Lechner here, and I think I liked this one instead of insinuating the pickaxe, or not even seeing that it's there. Or pulling it back. I'm going to go with the action on that, and then the little added bonus of one of the junior red pots coming by and checking on their work. Speaking of junior red pots, as always, everywhere they are, continue walking around, only stopping to talk shop if necessary. And honestly, just a status report, we're booking through these pretty quickly. We're already about a quarter of the way through everything that we're going to be looking at. Which is good, because there's cut tomorrow, and I'm going to be out there for that. Bright and early. There we go. This is another set I was hoping to see worked out. And I don't know. I believe it might have did. So I just kind of laid down in front of the hole. Just a little bit of zoom, but not too much. So, close enough without being too close. And I do like how these turned out. So this is one of the Lechner Chiefs. Put the sun behind him. I think I'm going to take this one. So way back here, when I saw that we had one of the bigger dudes working on it, that's why I ran over here, so I could do this. So I could have somebody who could blot out the sun for me, and would also look pretty cool shooting from the ground up. Now, what happens once you start digging is everybody's got to get in there and start pulling out all the dirt that's been broken up with the pickaxes and shovels. So the fastest way to do that is with the pots. So everybody has their pots with them, and they'll dig their pots down in there and pull out as much dirt as quickly as possible. So there's, everybody given a wide berth, dig, 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 and then everybody jumps in and starts pulling dirt out. So I'll just flag one of these to come back to it and see. I did this a couple times, so. And we're back to this angle again. See what happens when they get out of the way of the sun there. Kind of blows that out. It's all right. I think I like one of those too. Going with that one. All right, so let's see, where are we back to? It's one of the Browns having a talk with one of the Legner Yellows. He was Legner last year, so this was a bit of friendly advice on how to put the spurs to the crew. And we're back at OC, or with one of the OC folks digging at that hole that they shared with Legner. And so we're making progress. Train came by. I don't know, anybody in the train business, I think it'd be red ass if the trains blew hullabaloo when they blew by there. They're blowing the dang horn anyway. So, yeah. If you or somebody you know is in the train business, tell them to blow hullabaloo when they're passing stack site. We're back at Walton's hole. Nothing to see here. I used to, all the photos I would take, I used to just, every angle or whatever that I worked on, I would pick one from every place I shot and just put them all up there. But now, I'm if it didn't work, then I just don't put it up there. But I do try and make sure that we get as many folks as possible. Send those home to mom and dad. Not just throwing everything at the wall anymore. So back at FHK's hole, what ended up happening for them, unfortunately, is that their hole was a little narrow. So they got down, but by the time I left, they were already having to widen it back out again. And here doing the measurement, lay the crowbar across, run the measuring tape down. So we see they're making progress. And as the holes get deeper, you can't be such a mad dash, and so people start hanging into the hole, and then people having to start holding people down into the hole. And we're going to see this again, possibly once it's time to dig the perimeter poles, which are going to be set even deeper. That's a different look though. It's fun if I can be around for digging perimeter poles. That's always fun because it's, the perimeter poles are going to be in front of where these light poles are. So the light is just going to be hitting the holes where they're digging the perimeter poles. And so it's a pretty cool setup. We're back over at Walton's hole with Leggett, and we see theirs has got some pretty good progress down in the hole, pulling out the dirt. It wasn't the worst day. It was hot. It was good and hot. It had been hotter earlier, a couple weeks earlier, so it certainly wasn't fun. But it had been worse. It's certainly going to be better this weekend. Sorry about that. Just hit the microphone. Cut it. Start over. Every year, Walton, the back of their infamous load shirts has got a different quote, something from that year, kind of referencing that year. So last year's was "Apes Together Strong." That was the deal. I've always got something clever on their load shirts. Schumacher again. Digging starts to look cooler the deeper you get. Either having to be in the hole or however you have to get after it. Now at this point, they're making good progress, and as we've seen sometimes in the past, it happens more and more these days as my kids get older. They'll come out with me sometimes if we know that they can be out there and either be productive or stay out of the way of folks who are being productive. And so my oldest and my youngest came out to have a look around and enjoy all these Aggies working their butts off on Bonfire and play around at Stack Site and its tree swing and everything that's going on out there. And so now that the holes were getting to a point, some of them, that they needed to be measured, with something more than just the measuring tape. And so, I donated my measuring tape to the deal. So there's my oldest, my biggest measuring tape. And there's my smallest measuring tape. So on our way home, I asked him, "Hey, what was your favorite part?" He said, "Getting in the holes." So, of course. That's my dude. And so he and I would go on to check, measure the other holes as we were going. We stopped at Kruger, and don't worry, we're almost done digging holes, and then we're going to look at cut. But we would go and check the other holes, and we left the oldest behind, and she helped empty out that hole with Walton and Leggett there. So she handing pots and emptying out. So got to be productive. Can't be out there if you're not productive. Doesn't matter how old you are. So here we are at Kruger again. The youngest checking that hole. Got to borrow a pot, for safety. I believe, I don't know, I left before everything was finished. I believe Kruger finished second out of the whole deal. I never followed up to confirm because we had cut the next day. In only like 30 more shots, we had cut. So we are getting to that. Almost there. So once cut starts, you forget about everything else. I know. I think we're going to see. We're definitely going to see in the photos from cut. I stopped at stack site on the way home to catch unload and see how that was going. And we're going to see that they had at stack site they already had one of the light poles up by the next day. Lechner Chiefs together. FHK still working on that hole. Oh, so the other thing about moving the holes all the time is, moving the whole architecture every year. Is that you figure out just how far you've moved it when you come across stuff like I don't know, maybe I took a photo of it just to let me scroll back here and look at Walton. Because their hole moved over where an old fire pit had been. And there's no telling what fire pit it was. Bonfire's been built out there since 2009, so this is the 13th, right? 12th. 13th. Yes. This is the 13th stack that's been built out at this stack site. So as things move around, no telling what hole or what year it was coming from. But I can't find it right off the bat, and I know we all want to get the cut photos. And a lot of us want to get back to bed with cut tomorrow morning. But there was Walton's hole went into one of the previous fire pits. You saw all the ashes down in there. And that's just what happens with moving the whole thing around. And that's one of the nice little reminders that this thing has been there for a while. When you come across stuff like old perimeter fire evidence. One of these days, I'm gonna get down to the bottom of how far it's moved every year. Where are we now versus where were we 12 years ago? So the Jerps called everybody over to have a little chat. It was getting pretty warm. There was a football game coming up. Everybody wanted to get this work done. So this was just a little meeting of the minds to discuss, possibly accelerating the progress a little bit and what that should look like. While all this was going on, one of the threats of not getting done fast enough is that if you don't get it done fast enough digging the holes, then the trucks are going to start showing up. And if you're still there, then you've got to unload the trucks. And so a truck did show up, and folks had to go over there and help unload it. The greens, there's the green pots up there throwing the logs off the truck, starting with the high ports, remembering from earlier that high ports are anything that two people can carry. Those are the last things that are put onto the truck. So the greens are tossing those off. And in a second, they're going to tie the ropes onto the truck sticks there, and they're going to rip them off. But first, before you do that, you get all the high ports and anything you can throw off. So here we've got the Strange pot from Lechner. Lechner's pots are named for, you got Strange, oh my gosh, Charm. Other dorms have different lines. Every dorm, every crew is going to have their own line of names for their different roles. And Lechner's got a strange charm. Son of a gun. I don't know. Their pots are named for the subatomic particles, is what I'm getting at. Once again, I think I've said it every week so far, but Lechner is the honors dorm, Lech nerds. So they own it, and they're proud of it, and they should be. But here is the strange pot, and one of the strange pots, idiosyncrasies is eating, almost anything that you find for you. If you find a treasure, then the strange pot will eat it for you. But there's some rules. It can't be shiny. It can't be poisonous. It can't be furry. So, basically limited to like crickets. But I'm told this one was delicious. It tasted nothing like chicken, supposedly. Strange pots. It's one of the fun things, and we're about halfway through now, and I know it's we got a long night. So remind me later. Remind me some other time later. I'm reminded of another bump run-in with the strange pot from Lechner 4 or 5 years ago. And if we had more time, I'd go jump in and look for it. But it was 4 or 5 years ago. I'll find it again. Don't worry. But it's one of the fun things that Lechner does, and that all the crews do. All the crews have their own thing. And, it's one of the fun things about staying in separate crews and then only occasionally bumping into each other. Usually it's at stack site that you're first really working with everybody. And up until last year when they started working on stack site early because of COVID and preparing for that, the first that you were really around another crew for a long time was when you were actually stacking. So when you've done all this work and you're already 2/3 of the way time-wise through the season, then you start stacking, then it's all starting to come together, and then you start to realize, oh, right, this is what all this is for. You kind of put your head down, that when it's all done, there's going to be a bonfire, but, it's not until that everybody comes together that right, this makes sense. Now I understand. You forget that there's all these other trees being cut down. There's all this other work being done. And it's a stretch of the imagination to imagine that what you've done is going to turn into bonfire. And then everybody comes together and then yes. It's a really cool kind of unfolding of community where you've got these smaller communities that get very, very tight working together, and then they join the bigger community that ultimately comes together to stack bonfire. All of which to say that there's these tight communities that have their own things that they do, like have a strange pot that'll eat a cricket, and in building these tight communities, it makes the bigger community that much stronger when they all come together and each having developed their own identity and their own strengths and their own, qualities. Like bricks in a wall, everything comes together, and it's great. So when the setup is that everybody's supposed to be apart, it makes the moments where they come together, pretty fun. And the moments where they can realize that these other communities that they're not in, it's not the same thing as what you're experiencing. It's a different group, and they have their own different things. And so going back to 5-6 years ago, which again, I'm going to go back when we have more time later, and I'm going to find that one. But there was this cool deal. I think it was Kruger. If I'm remembering correctly, it was Kruger that was right next to Lechner. And they didn't know, only one of their upperclassmen knew about the strange pot deal at that point in the season. And they found some kind of critter. You know, as a bug, some kind of insect. And then they said, hey, let's call the strange pot. And the underclassmen certainly had no idea what he was talking about. And so they called for a strange pot, and then coming running out of the woods. Here comes Lechner from their little corner of the woods, working separately, not with them. Well, he just shows up, and they hand him the insect, and he makes sure that everybody's gathered around, and then he eats it, and everybody went crazy, and then he left. And point being, the crews motivate each other, and they they have something to offer each other, even if they're not working together all the time. It makes the moments where they come together, especially before stack, just really, it's fun. Anyway, rabbit hole. Strange pot rabbit hole. So here's the junior red pot, the head stack junior red pot. So all things working out as planned. This will be next year's head stack. Now he's a junior head stack, which is why he's up on the truck, and he's letting everybody know what they're going to need to do in order to get this truck unloaded. And that is, all of the truck sticks have been wrapped up with rope, and they're about to rip the truck sticks off the truck, and then all the logs will be pushed off. Now, what is, to me, ironic about this head stack, who's barking at everybody right now and about to unload a truck, last year he was in Walton and he loaded the trucks. So working a bit in reverse. And again, in keeping with what I said ends up happening here, this is what I end up having to do. Which one? I like this one. Just the right amount of direct. So we're going to go with that one. Again, what's happening here, all I'm doing is turning on a live stream to the process I'm going through anyway. I figure, why waste the opportunity to look at stuff? So I'm not changing much with what's going on. I'm just mostly saying out loud what it is that I was usually thinking by myself during a couple hours. Today's not going to be a couple hours. You don't need to make that much popcorn. So they've got the ropes. You see them wrapped around the truck sticks here and this one down here. Head stack junior red pot is up on the truck, giving the last bit of instructions. The greens got their feet on the logs closest to the edge of the truck. Everybody's putting their hands on the rope. They're getting their last bit of advice. Here they are braced. And what's going to happen is they're going to run as fast as they can. I'm sitting here pointing with my hands like that makes any sense. They're going to run as fast as they can this way. And there's a bunch of slack that's kind of laid out uniformly at the bottom underneath the stick here. And so they're going to run out and get a whole bunch of momentum before they run out of slack, and then that's going to break off the truck sticks. And then they're going to keep running until they're told not to run. So that's what he's saying right now. He's giving them that warning one more time, that you will not stop running until I tell you to stop running. He said that about a dozen times. And then they're going to take off running. And you see here they've run out of slack. And it's broken free. So they've broken the truck sticks off, and they're going to run a little bit farther before they're told to stop. And then they're going to push all the logs off. Not all of them. They're going to push them off a little bit at a time. And as the logs come down, after the logs have come down, they're going to call for the chiefs to come up, and only the crew chiefs are going to come to the base of the truck and pull the logs away a little bit farther and stage them far away from the truck, and everybody's going to carry those off, and then they're going to push off some more, and then crew chiefs are going to come back and push them out, and so that goes on and on. It was about this point that I left, and so now we're going to get into the other deal. Cut. So coming into cut site this year, you almost necessarily have to pass by load site. So on my way through load site, I caught them bringing in a log or two. Lechner was helping with load on this day. Every year, almost everybody gets a chance to get in on load. There's one crew that specializes in it, as you may be familiar with. That's Walton. That's their expertise. But everybody's going to get a shot. Now, we spent a lot of time at load last week, so I didn't spend a lot of time out here today. Did want to get a little bit of Lechner working on it. I wanted to get out to the woods and see what everybody else was up to. We had the senior red pots walking around inspecting the woods. It's always nice to see the senior red pots getting after it. Getting back into the mix. They can certainly Hollywood all they want to, but they don't. And that's nice. So here's the band working on one of their trees. And we're now about 2/3 the way through. So we're almost done. There was some good light in the BQ woods. And I was especially happy with what I had to work with here. Nice to see some intensity. And the band sure does have it. I've said it before that, everybody likes to give the band a little bit of heck. They're in front of everybody every week. They, Hollywood famous. But for all the stuff that the band has to do, everybody in the Corps got something to do. And, honestly, we're talking about college kids, right? Even the non-regs, the guys who aren't in the Corps, and everybody who's not in the Corps, they have stuff to do. Everybody's got a ton to do. Your students. So you got to go to class. You got to study. You're a living human person. You got to eat. The dorms go eat together. The outfits in the Corps, they go eat together. There's all this stuff that everybody has to do. The Corps got drill and inspections and all these and the outfit photos. It feels like every outfit's taking a photo every weekend. I mean, they got stuff all the time. But for everything that everybody has to do, the band's got to do a whole lot too. The drilling and everything for the world famous, nationally famous Fighting Texas Aggie band. So for all the stuff that the band has to do, there we go. Dude. Dadgum. I'm digging that. Yeah, that's freaking cool. I got distracted. Dude, that's cool. So, for all the stuff that the band has to do, they're still coming out and they're putting out for Bonfire. That's awesome. In this day, they had just been. Gosh, where were they? Of course, yes, duh. They were at Kyle Field the day before. They were marching at Kyle Field the day before, and then here they are. Was that last week? Was it Kyle Field was last weekend, right? Holy mackerel! Was man, I'm all of my. Let me look this back up again. Make sure I know where they were. What in the heck? We, y'all, I'm losing my mind. You hear me typing? 2021 Aggie football schedule. They were at Kyle Field, right? Right. Yes, we played the Lobos. Everybody's a Lobo. No, they're not. Uh, so okay, so yeah, I'm thinking of they had drill and all that stuff during the week. They go out and they put on an outstanding performance at Kyle Field against the Lobos. It was the week before that they had been out in Colorado, in freaking Colorado, and the biggest group of core participants at Cut the next day, so not this weekend, but the weekend before, the biggest group of Cut participants out there was the freaking band who just gotten back from Colorado and managed to come out and put out for Bonfire. Ah, man. You know, talk your mess about the band and everything. I mean, everybody does. It's fun. But these guys put out for Bonfire 103%. So there's a lot of these that turned out pretty nice because there was a whole lot of light and I could tighten things up and really get some action there. And there's a lot of them that I like. But the one I'm going to end up going with here is this one. I don't think I've had one like that before. I like that. That's what we're going with, and the rest are cool, but that's what I'm going with. When they're cutting on a tree, they're going to be overseen throughout the process by their butt for Surge, butt for Junior. That's what the Corps refers to their leadership as. Surge butts are juniors in the Corps of Cadets. Your butt pot is your bonfire leadership junior in your outfit. And then the sophomore is the piss pot for piss head. Of note, and this is we're not going to go all the way down this rabbit hole, but of note, these are words that if you're a sophomore, a pisshead, you can't say but. That's a junior word. If you're a fish, you can't say pisshead or but. And anyway, that's a whole nother rabbit hole for a whole other day. But there's so much stuff. Somebody should write a dictionary or something like that, or don't do that. You know what? Don't do that. So what's happened here is this Aggie was swinging on a tree. I'm sitting there looking at it, trying to get some shots of him swinging on a tree right next to where we just were. So here was the band working on this tree, and next to, but at a safe distance, that they were working over here on this tree. C1 is the outfit here. And this young man was swinging, and we got a great stock of brown pots this year. There's brown pots are great in any year, of course, but I like the leadership and the activity. We saw it all the way back at digging the holes, um, with the Lechner brown pot, who came back to coach up the Lechner yellow pot. We stopped at that one. I'm gonna see if I can go back. Well, it's fine. It's fine. You know what I'm saying. So we saw that photo earlier. Just rewind the stream. That's fine. But we saw it early with the brown pot, who was stopping to coach up the yellow pot from Lechner, and we're seeing it here. This brown pot identified some room for some extra improvement, and he took some time to come over, and certainly he had a whole load of stuff that he could be doing. Playing with a chainsaw over there, cutting things down. And he took the time to come over here and coach up one of the motivators from the course. So and he got to work. Now here's another set that I was really hoping, and I'm not sure. I didn't take a close look. I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to ruin the surprise until now. I don't know if you can see what I'm trying to do there. Can you see what I'm trying to do there? I spent more than a little bit of time here. And come on. Somewhere in here is the one. The light was just right. Everything was just right. Here's the C1 butt pot. Taking a turn swinging. And so I wanted to get a picture of the wedge. The wedge on the tree, right? Where the cut is being made. And the light was right, and just there was a lot I could do. I could tighten things up a little bit, compress the photo a little bit, and hopefully, please tell me I got one. I think that one's close. Maybe. But you see that's what I'm taking a picture of right there. That's the picture. Not all this. That. I think I did it. Maybe not that one. I'm going to spare you, but I am pleased. That's it. That's the one. Right there. That's what I was after. Oh, dude. Oh, man. Yeah, that one's not near what the other one was. Sweet. Yeah, that one didn't. See, this is great. If I was shooting the very tip of his pot, yeah, this would be perfect. So that other one, let's go back to that other one. This is the one that we're keeping for this one. That's the shot right there. Cool. The other thing about some of these that might have been okay. Where is it? This one's close. I'm gonna flag them both. I'll go back and look, and then we'll see later which one I chose. Probably Tuesday, maybe Monday. All these photos will be published to the website, and you'll see which ones made the cut. But the thing about these photos is, where was one of those ones? that I thought worked but wasn't going to work. So it's hard to do these because you got the head's moving, and then the head is turning, and then the axe is coming down, and all that stuff is happening, and then sometimes the head turns and you get this here, this big idiot right there. See? Look at that schmuck. So that's not going to work. But anyway, we got the good one. There's at least a couple in there that we're going to use. So here's one H1. I don't remember seeing them out last year, so it was really good to see them out on this day. The Corps got challenges in coming out every year. Before I say this, I want to point out, as per usual, I'm enjoying a drink. The name of whiskey I'm not going to name until they become a sponsor, but whiskey sour with grapefruit. I'll show you the recipe sometime. So before I say that, to explain why I would say this out loud, I am having a little nightcap here. So I'll say what maybe I wouldn't have said before I started this whiskey sour. The Corps got challenges this year that are in a lot of ways the same as a couple years ago, in that they have stuff to do, and in every year the Corps got stuff to do. Now, what used to happen when Bonfire was an officially sanctioned university event is that some of their outfit activities that they had to participate in to contribute to the accomplishments of the outfit, Bonfire counted as one of those things because it was officially recognized. So if you as an individual person go out and clean up trash on the highway and you just do that yourself, well, that doesn't count because it's not officially recognized. But if your outfit adopts a highway, that's an official program and that works. You can't do that with Bonfire now. So the Corps, it's a simple math equation. There's 168 hours in a week. You're going to spend a bunch of that time sleeping. You're going to be eating. You're going to be, and we talked about this earlier. The Corps got all that stuff going on. And not like non-regs, they can't just say, I don't feel like doing that today. That somebody, you got to do that. I think at the end of the day, they probably spend close to the same amount of time on everything. But the Corps has no choice. And then on top of that, they got stuff that non-regs don't have, like drill and inspections and all that. So that's always going to be a challenge. But they didn't have that challenge last year because the Corps did not have to do all of the stuff on the quad that they did last year. The interactions with upperclassmen were severely limited because of COVID, quote, because of COVID. So the things that would consume people's time were severely mitigated. So the math equation starts to lean towards having more free time. And then the Corps games, quote, games, the things that are part of teaching and building a sense of tradition and continuity from year to year, those were severely mitigated, again, because of, quote, COVID. So the Corps and all of its participants had all of this freedom that they didn't have before. And so they were able to spend that time out at Bonfire. That was the place that they could go to really get after it, because you couldn't do it on campus anymore. You couldn't really, get in the trenches with folks and get stuff done in that way anymore. And then you had all this free time because it wasn't consumed by other things. So you come out to Bonfire. It was a banner year last year for the Corps. So great for them, and it's so motivating. And something that I've noticed this year is that it's much more of a challenge for them. they've their time is now being consumed. However, there's not the core games that old Ags who remember being in the core. You're not going to recognize a lot of what they're going through now because they can't do the things that used to happen again under the auspices or whatever of being a COVID thing. They're not going to have a lot of those interactions, those upperclassmen interactions, those moments of learning and the continuity year to year of tradition and all these things that have to be really ingrained in your core experience. That's not happening. And at the same time, they're still having their time eaten up now because, you can't play the core games because of COVID, but you can be obligated to do all these other things. So you don't get to come out the bonfire as much. So, I was a non-reg, but I really feel for the core this year because it's like the worst of both worlds. They don't have the free time. It consumed by other things, but they're not getting so much of the experience that I know is so important to so many of the core guys. The learning experience and the teaching experience, it's unfortunately compromised. And so, to see H1 out in a year that's so challenging, and having not seen them last year when it was easier for them to be out, it gives me some hope. It gives me a sense of optimism. In the meantime, I do understand that a lot of the folks that were building Bonfire last year, they look at the core's availability now, and there's some worry. There's where's all the core guys? There's less core guys out here this year than there were last year. I'm not going to argue that. That's true. But it is probably in line with the amount of core participation from 2 years ago, back before COVID, when they didn't have the free time and when they had all this other stuff to do and Bonfire didn't count for what you were doing. We're back to that, except slightly worse because experience-wise, because of the things that carried over from last year, as far as upperclassmen, the freshmen and underclassmen interactions and that whole experience. It's a challenge. It really is. And I have spent so much time trying to understand and get an explanation from the core and from participants in the core. All right, put me in your shoes. What's going on with y'all this year? What's it like? It's tough. It's tough. This message brought to you by the makers of Censored Until They Sponsor Me and my secret grapefruit whiskey sour recipe. All right. Back to business. C2 and their butt pot, working on that wedge that H1 was just working on. This isn't like a, fire and brimstone or whatever, end of the world, cataclysmic, whatever. The core's experiencing challenges that the core has experienced, of a scope that the core has experienced in every year. When we started building Bonfire again off campus, and this sort of thing comes up every year when people are talking about, the challenges, right? That's one thing. Every year's got different challenges, but the one thing that's in common, even though the challenges are different, the fact that the challenges exist is the same. And so it's kind of fun, right? As old Ags to come back and listen to the challenges now, and current students like saying, hey, this is what we're facing now. And, so there's been a lot of talk about the challenges now versus when this all got started again. And there's, certainly if you were in the core and you remember last year and your freedom and your availability to participate in Bonfire last year, you kind of look at now and you go, man, I can't even talk to my freshmen now. I'm a junior and I'm not allowed to talk to my freshmen in any way at all. So, not even like, uh, uh, disciplining or anything. I'm not allowed to talk to the freshmen at all, which is crazy because they have so much to learn from their upperclassmen. And that's what they came here for, is to learn from their upperclassmen. And so they can't. And they say, oh man, this is so hard. This is so tough. And I don't know if we're ever going to get through this. And at this point, that's, usually when I can present the reminder that when we started out, the core it wasn't just, this is, it's your weekend, you do whatever you want. You could get in serious trouble for coming out the bonfire. And we used to have folks come out and try and figure out who was out there at bonfire. And so it was my job, and I loved this job. It was one of my favorite jobs that I ever did as a student leader, was taking somebody to the places where the core wasn't and then being frustrated when I couldn't find them. I'm sorry. I guess they're not here today. I apologize. I thought they were here. They're not here. Have a good day. And yet, the core continued to come out, but not even a fraction of what comes out today. So when the students today are sweating their ability to participate and overcome those challenges, it is God's honest truth that it has been way, way worse. So don't sweat it, man. Come out and build bonfire. It's fine. You're going to be fine. And at the end of the day, if somebody needs to, I'm used to being in trouble. I'll help you out. Point being, things have definitely been worse for the core. They're doing such a great job. Here's H1's butt pot, and I'm playing around with the exposures a little bit. You saw that in shots before, especially with those ones where I was trying to shoot what was going on in the glasses, and we saw like this one here, which is now my computer backdrop, tightening up what's happening in the frame, really freezing the action with just a hint of things moving, but otherwise pretty tight. The chip just breaking off the tree here and things just popping out, right? So I've done a lot of that, and I like that. I like kind of freezing things. But I mean, everybody does that. But here I started playing around because there was just enough light available. You don't want too much light if you're going to open things up to movement. But there was just enough light available where we were. And you could see here when we first walked in where I went from where it had been very well lit here to here. And you see how much darker this is. And it took me a second to, action was happening. It took me a second to bring the exposures back to where it needed to be. So point being, there's a little bit less light, so I can start playing around with doing like this and opening things up to movement. And when you open things up to movement, not only do you get the movement of what you want to catch the movement of, but you can be, an idiot and catch the movement of a tree that's not moving because you're moving. And so ultimately, I think one of these last shots I was able to get sort of what I was looking for there. And what I'm really trying to get, or hope that I did get, is some balance between the movement of the subject and the stillness of the tree. And that's sort of close, but I happened to catch this right as the axe was hitting. This has still got a little bit of a shake in it. You can see the movement here. So what I did was I just slowed it down a little bit. I left that shutter open for longer, for anybody who, doesn't photography. So that opens it up so you can catch some of that movement. But I happened to catch this one, which right now I feel like was sort of like the best one. But I caught it right at the time that the axe was stopping into the tree. So you can see he's still moving, but the axe is not all that bad. This is a little rough. So somewhere in here, though, I know there's got to be the one. This is pretty close, but just not the right time. The axe is starting to come back. This isn't the axe going forward. This is the axe bouncing back. So I'm not crazy about it. But like I said, I know we all got stuff to do. So I'm just going to flag a couple of these, and I'm going to come back to them. That's a little bit better. We'll come back. Gosh, how long did I spend on the core? Anyway, God, I love the core, man. Next to Bonfire, the oldest tradition at Texas A&M is the Corps Cadets. Next to Bonfire. Bonfire, I believe, is the second oldest tradition at Texas A&M. We know for certain that Bonfire started in 1907. We know that at the absolute latest, that's when Bonfire started. And there's records of bonfires being burned annually going back to the 1800s. And so the question is, were these things that happened separate of Bonfire, or were these predecessors of Bonfire, or were these Bonfire with a capital B? I don't know if we'll ever figure that out, but if we're talking the late 1800s, well, Texas A&M started in 1876. And so, of course, the Corps Cadets started in 1876. Nothing's going to be older than the Corps Cadets. But if it's true that Bonfire's roots stretch into the late 1800s, that means that Bonfire is the second oldest tradition at Texas A&M. But, of course, now it's not just limited to the Corps Cadets. Here we are in one of the non-reg dorms. This is a pelt. And just like we saw with the Corps, where you've got a butt pot, you got a butt pot looking over the progress of a tree. The non-regs are going to have a crew chief looking over the progress of a tree. Every crew is going to have the names of and years of the people who wore their pot before them. So this is a pelt. A pelt got fired up back, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. And so the names on the pot, there's just a couple on them. But you'll see these other pots. We looked at Kruger. We might have looked at Kruger earlier this year, but their names go all the way up to here, up to the top. You look at the red pots, and their names go all the way up to the top and down both sides. You put the names on the pot of everybody who wore that pot before you. And it's a nice reminder of the fact that, when you're a student leading Bonfire or anything at Texas A&M, yell leader, outfit leadership, whatever it is, you are in charge. You are the authority. As one outstanding vice president of student affairs once told me when he came to A&M, he never experienced anywhere, as he said, he never experienced anywhere where the students had such a degree of advice and consent over everything. That's one of the beautiful things about A&M is that as a student, all these things that are so important to Texas A&M, they're in your hands. It's not some token thing. You really are leading the institution. And so while you're leading and while it is your job and everybody else who's led before you is now trusting you with this and truly trusting you with this, they're not going to show up and tell you how to do your job. That's not the way it works. They were given the opportunity to lead when they were students, and now you are, and they give you the same opportunity that they had. Things like the names on the pots are a nice reminder that, while you may be in charge, you're in charge of something that somebody else made possible and somebody else led before you. And every single pot out there, even the red pots with the names up both sides and up the back. And it was this weekend that we were looking at one of the red pots and we were wondering, man, is there any more room left? Are we going to have to start writing on the inside, or what are we going to do? Even those pots started with just a name or two at the bottom. So we're finishing up here with the pelt, and this tree starts coming down. Somebody forgot to give him privileges, so he just watched it fall. He didn't wildcat. And that's another rabbit hole we're not going down. But on my way out of the pelt woods, I caught one of the prior chiefs down swinging, cleaning up a log. Came into Neely Woods. Found one of the prior year's brown pots working on a tree there. And again, the roving junior red pot walking his way through the woods. You can always tell when a junior red pot is coming, because when they're coming, you're going to hear all the crews yelling, "Howdy, Mr. Red Pot, sir." It's a nice way of greeting the red pots and welcoming them to your woods. It's also a nice way of letting everybody else in the woods know that they're being watched. Caught an ace lying in one of the footpaths there. And at this point, I believe I might have been heading back out again. And we're back at load one more time, which again, you have to pass by on your way into and out of the woods. Oh, I did try and stop at Leggett. I passed by Load and made a trip back to Leggett. Of all the crews this year, I've gotten everybody. OC, Schumacher, Kruger, Appelt, Walton, FHK, Neely, Lechner, and whoever else I've forgotten. I've gotten them all. I got all the outfits. But I haven't got Leggett yet. They were out for the first week or two, because COVID is a thing. And so for protocol reasons, they were out, and I just missed them. And so when I went out to this was right before lunch. And so I was just able to see him moving a couple trees out. I will definitely be stopping at Leggett tomorrow, so we can get some of them. That's my oldest daughter's adopted crew, and they're an outstanding group of motivators. So I'm going to come back on this day. They were just finishing up just in time for lunch, and I had to head out, and so I didn't get to see them cutting on a tree. But I'm going to catch up with that tomorrow, Here's one of the green pots hauling a log up to load site. So you bring the logs out to the skids, and then the tractor comes by, ties them up, takes them out to load. Like it's working right next door to Hart. Here they are throwing stuff onto the brush pile. And then after that, we are just a few dozen away from the end here. Here's the truck heading up to stack site. On my way to stack site there to catch unload, and snapped a couple from the cab on our way there. And unload. And we get to unload, and there's OC working. Unload is about as unforgiving and thankless as load is. But that's where you get the logs up to stack site, and you get them all off, and then the unload crew, and that's on rotation. It's assigned to somebody new every week. The unload crew is out there to pull the logs off the truck and get them sorted onto the stack site skids. There's head stack senior red pot and one of the brown pots. Pulling off the high ports before they tug on the ropes and break off the truck sticks. We saw this earlier yesterday. The junior head stack at unload at stack site, once the truck is on stack site, the junior head stack is going to stay on the truck as soon as it's parked, and they're not going to get off until the job is done. And then the senior head stack will come on there and help along with the brown pot as well. So, unload becomes one of the places where you see the two generations of red pots really working together. You see that a little bit at load too, with your junior truck pot working with the senior truck pot, but you don't see it anywhere as much as you do at unload. There's this year's senior head stack pushing the logs off. OC waiting for the all clear to jump in, continue unloading the logs. And at this point, I headed out and snapped another one of ABT on the way. So that's it. That's the whole weekend. That's the biggest weekend photos-wise so far. Took about 1,000, close to 1,000 shots. And we're going to wind up with maybe, 50, 60, maybe more, probably 50 or 60 for this weekend. But we see progress is being made. We saw in the background there, the skids are accumulating. They stretch from here all the way, about a football field this way. And we're only on the third week of cut. So they're making really great progress. Everybody out there is doing a hell of a fine job this year. Everybody's dealing with their challenges, the learning curve coming off of COVID to now kind of COVID. Everybody's following protocols and keeping each other safe. Everybody's learning how to work in this kind of hybrid situation. And they're doing an outstanding job. They've adopted the things that they had to do last year that make sense to choose to continue to do. It's shaping up to be a great season. So I appreciate you joining me on this. Again, follow Student Bonfire at Student Bonfire on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram. Follow the gallery at Dion C Gallery on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Let's build the hell out of Bonfire Aggies. It's going to be an outstanding year. Tomorrow, beat the hell out of Arkansas. I'll see y'all out in the woods. And then I'll see y'all later next week when we review photos from the 4th weekend of Cut as we work our way towards Bonfire 2021. Thank y'all for your support, and build the hell out of Bonfire Aggies. Gig 'em.